You're listening to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast, episode number 71. Welcome to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. I'm your host, Paula Price, lawyer turned certified executive coach. This podcast was created to empower women lawyers just like you to create a life and practice you love. Join me every week for a break from the hustle so we can focus on you, what you truly want, and how you can create it. If you're over the overwhelm, done with putting out fires, and ready to redefine success on your own terms, you're in the right place. Ready for today's episode? Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. It's Paula here, and I'm delighted to have you here this week. We are joined by a very special guest. Her name is Allison Wolf. And if you haven't met or heard of Allison before, Allison is a lawyer coach, and she has been a lawyer coach for the past 18 years. She works exclusively with lawyers at all stages of practice. She is a speaker. She is the founder of AMP, which is Associate Mentoring Plus. It's a membership program that she has created to develop associates. And she is a monthly contributor to the slaw.ca blog. And she is an all-around amazing human. I've had the privilege of working with Allison before, and I'm so excited to have her here today. Allison, welcome to the podcast.
Paula, thank you so much. It's exciting to be here. I've been interested in your podcast and how it's been developing, and wow, to find myself as a guest is amazing.
Thank you so much. Well, part of the fun of having a podcast like this is being able to bring on speakers like you who are so amazing to speak with, first of all, and who have so much to share, so much wisdom, so many insights, practical advice for listeners, right? We're speaking to women lawyers who are looking to incorporate more joy into their practice, who are looking to advance professionally, who are wanting to be intentional about their career paths. And so you are the perfect guest for this show to be able to share some of what you've learned over the past 18 years. And one of the things I wanted to highlight before we dive into the topic, which is all about partnership, is for any of you listening, I actually discovered Allison at the very beginning of my path to becoming a lawyer coach. And this goes way back to, I think it was 2015. I don't know if Allison has heard this story. I think I've shared it with her before. But I remember, I'll cut the long story to a short one, but I basically Googled lawyer coach, and Allison's name was the first name that appeared on my Google search. And I looked her up and I just thought, this is such amazing work that she is doing. And so it's just really amazing to be able then to circle back several years later and to have the privilege of speaking with her, and also to have had the privilege of working with her. We've collaborated on projects in the past. It has been absolutely amazing. And I say this because, number one, I just want to highlight how wonderful Allison is. She's a leader. She is a leader in the lawyer coaching industry. And for all of you listening who are thinking about doing something differently in your practice, whether it's embracing a new technology, forging into a new practice area, doing things differently, if you're the one who leads the way, you are paving the path for others to follow in your tracks. So I just want to give a shout out to all of you who are thinking of doing that there is so much benefit, not just for you, but for others who are interested in doing things differently as well. And the other thing I wanted to highlight is that when you have the spark of an idea of something that you want to do, I highly encourage you to write it down and then to follow it, because you may find that that spark doesn't materialize right away, but over the course of the years, if you keep it on your radar, if you keep taking steps toward it, it's amazing to see what can happen. So just a shout out to you, Allison. Thank you for indulging me in my Allison. I just think that the work you're doing is amazing, and I'm so grateful to you for doing it. So back to our scheduled programming, which is partnership. We would love to know, first of all, in addition to what I've already shared, what can you tell us about yourself in terms of who you are and how it is that you have become a coach for lawyers?
I think I have to answer this way. Full disclosure, folks. I'm 56 years old. I know a lot about confidence. I know a lot about different mindsets we hold. And I have to tell you that when I get an introduction such as Paula has just offered up, and I hear some of the words that she's offered up, I still have that voice in my head. And that's okay. I recognize that. I feel quite humbled by that introduction. And I just want to dive into this topic. It's a great topic. I will say that I'm not agenda free. Coaches are often encouraged to not hold agendas for their clients. And for the most part, I do accomplish that, but I do have agendas. And with this topic, partnership, I definitely hold an agenda, and you're going to hear it. And the agenda that I hold is that I want folks to really think about this for themselves. I want to encourage deep thought and contemplation, and I want to encourage people to step away from snap judgments. That is my agenda when it comes to talking about partnership, and you're going to hear that. So let's dive in.
Beautiful. I love that, Allison. I love that you're coming to this conversation with clear intention. And I think what you're going to share will be so helpful for everybody who's thinking about partnership. I think it is a consideration that requires that deep thought. So let's dive in. First question. At what stage do you think a lawyer should start thinking about partnership?
Interesting. I think it can come up at different times for different people. The answer is any stage is appropriate. Some people, some rare individuals might have clarity on that from the very beginning. Most won't. For most, it may not be something they're even thinking about till much further in. So I have to say it depends. There's not a right time or a wrong time to be thinking about partnership.
Beautiful. And let's say you are at that stage. I mean, maybe you're one of those people. I've met lawyers who, from law school even, they have a very clear picture of what they want and they go for it and they follow that path the whole way through. For others, they actually start out that way and then change their mind. They think that's what they want and then they get into practice and they realize, you know what, this is not actually something that is right for me. And then there are lawyers who reach certain stages, right? They go in-house at a certain stage and they kind of write off that idea of being in a big firm. And a few years into that, they're invited to join a partnership and they consider that and it then becomes the right stage for them. So I love what you're saying about timing not necessarily being a one-size-fits-all approach, that it really depends on the individual. And so I guess regardless of where you fall on the timing, what are some of the questions that you might ask yourself if you're thinking about applying for partnership?
I was smiling as you were just speaking, Paula, because of what you said about thinking that you know what the path you're on is going to be about and thinking that you're on, you're choosing an area of practice that's a good fit. And then realizing, ooh, this is actually not feeling that good. I am noticing that I'm not aligned with the work that I'm doing. I'm noticing there's a disconnect. I'm not liking this. I need to find my way. I love that you brought that up because I think I'm going to just put this out there. I think for most lawyers, that's their experience. It's very hard to come straight out of law school into a practice area and a firm and find yourself in exactly the right place. Associates get very, very little opportunity to make decisions about what's going to be the right firm for them. It's more often, this is the firm that hired me. Same thing with practice area. It can very often be, this is the place that they put me. And so there's a lot of navigation in those early years. You asked about when do people start thinking about when's the right time to ask these questions about partnership. And I said there's no right time. There's all kinds of times. It's a right time when it comes up for you. However, I am finding that around 3-4 year call, a lot of folks start talking about it. And what I'm seeing and hearing in my conversations, so what I'm reading about and what I'm hearing in my conversations with young lawyers is a lot of, I don't think partnership's going to be for me. I can see that for previous generations, it was all about the partnership track and being on the partnership track. And I want to, the expectation is I'm going to want to be a partner. And that doesn't feel like a fit for me. I don't define myself that way. And my goals are not around where I'm going to sit in the hierarchy. Those may not be the exact words, but that's the message. And in those conversations, young lawyers are thinking that because they don't buy into that definition of success and because they don't want the kind of lives that they see partners living, that partnership's not going to be for them. And I encourage everyone to think past those immediate perceptions. Partnership can mean so many different things, and it can fit into an individual's life in many different ways. And I recognize and actually empathize and connect with the fact that many people now are moved by deeper motivations than checking the partnership box. And despite that, partnership can offer so many opportunities. So it's worthy of consideration.
Just so great. Thank you, Allison. I think going back to what you said initially about lawyers not having a lot of say sometimes in those early decisions. What is the firm they go to first? What is the practice area they end up in first? And things being almost chosen for them to an extent, because I think a lot of lawyers feel that way. And it can be really validating to hear that if you've had that experience, you're not the only one. I think we often think that we are the only ones who experience that, but it is quite common. Another thing you touched on, I think, is this idea of wanting to get it right, sort of thinking that you're on a certain path and that it must be the right path. And I think we've both had that experience working with lawyers and seeing how careers evolve. It's typically not a linear thing. It's often a zigzag. And so I just wanted to touch on that because I think there's a lot of anxiety. I know when I've spoken with clients, and I'm thinking of one in particular, where there's so much pressure that they put on themselves to make the right decision. And sometimes it's just not one decision. And moving ahead to the concept of partnership, I love what you're saying about lawyers of this generation looking at it and taking that decision very seriously and perhaps having a different set of filters that they apply at this stage versus what those filters may have been for lawyers who were practicing 10, 20, 30 or more years ago. So when you are finding yourself in that situation where you're thinking about partnership, you mentioned that there might be opportunities that would come along with that. What, in your view, are some of the reasons that somebody might want to go ahead and apply for partnership?
So, Paula, I was nodding my head as you were speaking because there are so many reasons why partnership can be a great fit for a practice. And some of those reasons, in a way, tie into the very things that may turn off associates in a sense. There's a flip side, if you will, to these attributes. But when we think about partnership is about power and having power within an organization. Certainly, if we look at it in a historical sense, being a partner, you have status, you have a place in the hierarchy. It definitely has been a very strong identity for people, and it has strong cultural implications. And some of these things for the younger generation may not be appealing. At the same time, being a partner is about being a business owner. It's about being able to guide the direction of an organization, a law firm. It's about having influence, enhanced influence. And when I think about my reason for doing the work that I do, which is transforming the practice of law for the better, I really hope that a number of the great associates I see coming up the ranks these days, who are so driven by values and have a clear-headed sense of what it means to be a lawyer and have a life. My hope is that so many of these individuals, and if you're listening, hey, you out there, are going to choose to step into partnership. Because by stepping into partnership, you have an ability to influence the direction of your firm, the policies that are being put in place, the kind of financial targets that are being set, and the lives of the people within that organization in a way that you don't otherwise. The practice of law is going to transform because partners will transform it. And we see it happening already. It's great people coming in and doing things differently. So we can't judge what partnership means by what it's looked like in the past. It is what we make of it. It is what an individual and a firm makes of it. And there's so much potential and opportunity for associates coming into that role to transform their law firms by rolling up their sleeves and getting involved. And that's not going to be for everybody. So the question is, as you asked earlier, Paula, how do you know if it's for you?
It's so great, Allison. And I'm going to ask you next what some of the drawbacks are for becoming a partner, some of the drawbacks, and then maybe we'll turn more specifically to some of the questions that you would want to ask yourself? So starting with some of the drawbacks you've mentioned in terms of the highlights, it's that opportunity to have influence. It's that opportunity to shape the way that lawyers are practicing within your organization. What are some of the drawbacks that might come along with becoming a partner?
I think one of the most important decisions, if you think partnership track is for you and you want to have that kind of a opportunity, is where you're becoming a partner, the firm you're becoming a partner in. The drawbacks are going to come up most particularly when there's a misalignment, when you're becoming a partner in a firm that's not perhaps values aligned with you. What are some of the drawbacks in these cases? Okay. There can be a greater administrative burden. There can be greater management burden. There can be increased pressure to bring in clients and business and to maintain a certain financial contribution to the firm. There could be the pressure of working with partners who you may or may not respect. And if you don't respect them, that's definitely a challenge. And more. The challenges that are most, or the drawbacks that are most frequently pointed to, are the greater time on administration and leadership. And we can come to that when we're thinking about, is this for you?
Interesting. So in terms of the questions then, if you're looking at, do I apply? Do I not apply? Is this right for me? You've outlined some of the benefits. You outlined some of the drawbacks. What kind of questions would you recommend asking yourself in that position?
Well, these questions are great for any associate to ask themselves as general questions. And then they lead into the partnership track questions. It helps to start paying attention to what's going on in your work life. And most specifically, what are the ups and what are the downs? It's a little bit like a game of hot and cold that we play as kids, but to take 2 weeks to journal what you notice about, hey, this is where I'm engaged. This is where I lose track of time on a project, on a file. This is what lights me up. This is what energizes me. I notice when I'm doing this kind of work, or I'm engaged in this kind of conversation, or I'm with these sorts of people, I'm energized. I'm into it. Conversely, notice what are the energy drains? What feels like it's sucking the life out of you? Get as specific as possible about it. Notice who are the people? What's the activity? How much time is being spent in these periods of energy drain? How much time is being spent in engagement or excitement or energized activities? This is very important. This starts to tell you about what's a fit and what's not a fit in your practice. How are your strengths coming into play at work? How are you having the opportunity to leverage those strengths in the work that you do? How does that feel? This is a starting point for understanding how you fit with your practice and where the satisfaction comes from. This can give you a sense of, is your practice area the right fit, or do you need to make shifts of some kind? If you're going to be going into a firm and into a partnership, it can help, that you have a satisfying practice as a starting point. The next piece is you might find that some of what you really enjoy is in fact leadership, is mentorship, is dealing with folks in the office. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. And that's an interesting clue as well. And then also to take a look at the firm that you're in. How are the partners making decisions? What's the structure, the decision-making structure, the leadership structure? How do you feel about the partners who are at the firm? Do you respect them? Do you look at their degree of understanding, the way they handle clients, their integrity? And are you on board with that? Are these people you want to sit around the table with? This is a very important question. Just one person who you feel is not aligned with you, just one person who rubs you the wrong way strongly can be a big problem and can be a sign that you practice may be right, but the people aren't, and maybe a move to a different firm is required. I also want to give you a bit of a heads up on something that doesn't immediately come up when people are thinking about where is it good to be a partner. And going back to how are decisions made at that firm? And I am seeing two models that I am finding to be highly ineffective and problematic for the health of a firm. And the two models are, one, the dictatorial or the long-term leader who's been in power at that firm, the managing partner for a period of years and years and years, who seems to make most of the decisions. We see the structure. We see the structure because the other partners don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to take on the work. And so decisions are made quite unilaterally. When I see this in a lot of firms, what I see is often that goes with it is a stagnant culture where we see a lack of change, a lack of development, a lack of investment, and an uncertain future. The second model that I think can be highly problematic is and this is when you have a certain number of partners, this can become very problematic. We all have to be involved in the decision. We have a consensus model. Great. Imagine a consensus model with 12 partners with 12 different practices who are all really busy and can barely find time to get in the room together. Guess what happens? Nothing happens. Oh, the document management system, not happening. Oh, recruiting that lateral we really need in that practice area, not happening. Oh, investing and updating the firm's parental leave policy, not happening. So as an associate, when you're looking at your firm, take a look at the decision-making structure of the firm and how workable is it? And do you want to get into it? Again, this might be a sign that partnership may be for you, but in a different firm. Also, it's worthwhile to think about what kind of ability am I going to have to influence my environment when I step into partnership? I have some ideas, you might say. I have ideas about how we can make things better. What do you see as the opportunities that you might have to influence and to put some of those ideas into play? That's going to be something you'll have to evaluate on a firm by firm basis. I know firms where a young partner, associate, became partner and immediately revamped the firm's mentorship program for the better, right? He stepped in and immediately pulled that off and carried it off. It was great, right? Other partners who get in and they make great changes, positive changes for the firm. They bring new ideas, new energy, passion and commitment, and the firm responds by giving them the room and space to innovate and create and bring something new into the firm. That's what you really want to see. And if not, in a larger firm, it might just be within a practice group that there's an opportunity to do things differently and shake it up.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Allison. I love how you've answered that question because I think you've set up a really neat framework for it. And going back to what we first started talking about, which was the associate who lands somewhere without really feeling like they've made a clear decision, what you've invited us to consider is to, number one, play that hot, cold game with yourself in a very intentional way. You mentioned journaling. I think it's a great way for each of us to pay attention and record and be very aware of what we gravitate to, what is energizing, as you described it, versus what is an energy drain. That will have a big impact in terms of what it is that you want to do more of in your practice. So there's that first piece where you're really focusing on what it is that you like and what you don't like. And from that place, you then get to move into what is it in your environment that will either support you in doing more of those things or not. And you mentioned in particular, who are the people that you're going to be in partnership with? How are decisions being made within the organization? And you drew that nice spectrum, right? There's the dictatorial model. Well, I'm sort of exaggerating, but it's that one strong leader is calling most of the shots versus at the opposite end of the spectrum, consensus where things simply don't get done. So where is your organization on that spectrum? And does it align with your own philosophy of how decisions should be made? And then finally, within that framework of the organization, how much influence do you see yourself being able to influence when you have an idea, whether it's introducing a new mentoring policy or shifting the way that your practice group is running itself? Is there opportunity for you to create that within the organization? So I love how you've taken it from the internal to, can you reflect what you want at that internal level in your external surroundings? So I think that's really great and helpful for anybody who is making a decision about whether or not to become a partner. And I'd go even further in a sense and just say that that kind of analysis, I think, is helpful at any stage of your practice, whether you're applying for partnership or not. It is becoming intentional about the choices that you're making, recognizing what you want to do more of, and then taking control of that, having more agency in your own career so that you don't feel like you're at the affect of what's going on around you. So if we take that then, you mentioned a couple of times that you want to be looking at your firm and deciding if this is the right place. Maybe partnership is what you want, but you're not getting the sense that it's going to be what you want where you currently are. So how do you know whether or not to pursue partnership in your place? Maybe there's opportunities for you to make changes that would make it the right place for you, or if you should be considering a path somewhere else.
Great question. Very important question. It comes down to alignment. And let me say at the start, it's never going to be perfect. We're not talking about perfect, but we are talking about pretty darn good. And what is most important is to look at your firm and to think to yourself, ask yourself the question, how aligned am I with this firm and with the partners here and with the direction this firm is heading in? I have spoken with lawyers who have asked themselves that question, and they've said, I don't think I can sit at the partnership table with that person sitting there because I don't respect his work or his approach. And I may have changed the gender there, or I may not, but that's a place of misalignment. I can see the decisions that the firm is making on various key topics, and they're not the decisions I would make or that I could support. There's a piece of misalignment there. Watch and notice where there's misalignment and where you feel, I think misalignment is the best word for it. I was looking for another way to describe it, but alignment is the word. Either you're aligned or you're not. And you can have some instances of places where you're not in agreement with a firm, but if there's too much of that, it's not going to be a good place to be a partner. And so then it's time to make a lateral move. And there are always opportunities to make great lateral moves. So I'm thinking about one individual I know who did exactly that, took a look around, made that decision, and found a firm where, guess what? He was a good fit. There was alignment, and has been able to become a partner and build a very successful practice, a rewarding practice at that firm.
I think that's a really good point to make, because I think sometimes lawyers can feel like they're not going to be promoted where they are, and that there must be something wrong with the way that they're doing things. And sometimes it's just a question of alignment, that they're not in the right environment. And so making that move somewhere else where there is opportunity for them can make all of the difference in terms of their career trajectory. So I think that's really helpful to highlight. When an associate decides, and sorry, you look like you're about to say something.
I wanted to say one more thing. Sometimes what can happen is be pre-partnership or even after partnership, a group of friends and colleagues might decide, hey, why don't we start a firm together, right? Sometimes starting a firm with someone you respect and admire can be a great way to go.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful thing to add. And I've seen that happen before with great success. And I think that's, again, going back to that question of alignment. Is it in alignment with your values, how you want to practice, your goals, or not? And if you do decide to go for it, what steps do you recommend taking? And by going for it, I mean, if you decide to pursue partnership, not necessarily pursue collecting, if you will, like-minded lawyers and forming a firm on your own. If you're wanting to do the more traditional, is it more traditional at this stage? I don't know. But what we think of as a more traditional path to partnership within an organization, what do you recommend doing?
I think it's great for this not to be a secret. It's not that you're going to have to shout it from the rooftops, but I think speak to a couple of partners who you really trust. Talk to your mentor. Express to them that you have an interest in something you'd like to work towards. And what do they advise? What's their guidance? Ask them, what sort of criteria are you going to use to evaluate this? Larger firms have a very open criteria. If you're in a big firm, you're going to go into an income partner stream, and there'll be criteria for how you graduate to an equity partner stream. In smaller and mid-sized firms, they may not have any particular metrics that they use. It can be a much more cloaked, unopaque process. So do your best to get people to talk with you about what they would recommend. Get a sense of what kind of timeline are you looking at in order so you can develop a plan that lets you accomplish some of the things, get the experience under your belt, take the actions that are going to give you the sort of practice that will enable you to step into that partnership. Oftentimes partnerships are looking for somebody, particularly if it's a small partnership, who is going to be a net contributor. a net contributor to the overall financial health and well-being of the organization, as well as a net contributor to the cultural makeup of the organization. So think about how you are growing your capacity and your ability to be a net contributor.
I love that, Allison. And I think regardless of what stage you're at, focusing on how to be a net contributor is always going to serve you well, right? I think I used to have a mentor slash, I guess he was my boss because I reported to him. He wanted to be a taxpayer. And I think what you said too about starting out those conversations with people that you trust so that you can figure out what it is that you would need to do, because it will be different depending on the organization that you are in, and sharing that information, because I think sometimes it is opaque or very transparent. You described some firms where it's a very clear, transparent policy. Everybody knows the steps that you need to take. Everybody's talking about it. And there might be other environments where it's much more opaque. It's not necessarily talked about. And so you may be the one who needs to initiate those conversations and to initiate them with people that you feel are going to be, that you can trust and who are going to be able to give you that information to help you move forward. So great advice.
Paula, very important words that you use there, people that you can trust. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing I want to add for associates, it's really helpful to start to learn about finances. Look, I don't think the most important part of a job is the money. However, it's important. And I am finding that firms are not open and clear necessarily with their associates about finances, and associates often don't understand how the finances of a law firm work. And you really do want to know your numbers. You want to know your numbers. You want to know how much you're contributing to the financial well-being of that firm as compared to how much you're costing the firm. You want to know how well the firm is doing. They probably won't let you know that, but to get a sense of, it helps to get an overall sense, even on a general way, about the firm's overall financial well-being and how they're measuring that, how they're tracking that, and also what your own contribution is.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice. And especially because it's so easy. And I can say, because I've been in that situation, it's so easy not to be up to date on all the nitty gritty, because chances are it's not the focal point of your job and you may not have time for it. And it may be one of those things that you simply just take for granted as being part of your work. When I worked at a firm, I think for the most part, I was in a lockstep system. And so I did not give a ton of thought to what was going on behind the scenes. But I think it can be really impactful when you take a look under the hood and start to understand what the numbers are, both from the perspective of being an associate and recognizing the contribution that you're making. And also, should you choose to go into a partnership, what the financial implications are going to be for you, because you may not be expecting all of the things that might happen, right? Your entitlement to certain benefits, what is going to happen when you are contributing financially to the firm, what does it actually look like, how are you going to get paid? So I think all those questions are ones that the more information you have, the better you'll be able to make decisions and decide what is right for you.
100%.
Yeah. And another question, Allison. So what are some of the common challenges that you see lawyers face when they have made a decision to go after partnership and now they're on that path?
You know, Paula, just to dovetail on what we've been talking about, it's crazy how many firms want their associates to step into partnership or make them an offer without giving them real access to the financial data. Hi, join my business, but we don't really want to show you too much about what it looks like, under the hood. It's the numbers do matter. You do really want to get a look at what's the financial health of the firm. I think the other piece that people are never clear about is, how does the buy-in work? And how much is the buy-in? And where is that money going to come from? Talking to financial advisors who are experienced with this, talking to friends who are partners who are experienced with this is going to help with that transition. And there's also the question of, what do I need to expect about that first year? Like you said, how is this going to impact my bottom line? How is this going to impact my take home in the first year and 2 or 3 years of partnership? Getting clear on that is going to be very, very helpful. And when can I start moving my ideas forward? When can I start? If I join the partnership, when can I start becoming an active partner? It's another question. Unfortunately, some firms almost have this unspoken rule, which is that you can't bring anything forward or make change for at least a few years until you've been in the partnership for a few years. And I say that's unfortunate because why lose valuable time? But there are some of those unspoken rules. And if you can surface some of those in conversations with people you trust, that's going to be helpful.
Beautiful. Another question for you, Allison, which is, let's say you decide that partnership is not for you. What other options are available to you?
If you decide that partnership's not for you and you want to be in private practice, and again, partnership's for you if you have a practice that is going to allow you to thrive and grow and develop, where being in private practice is the best place to have that, to do that legal work, then having that title of partner is very helpful, right? It can open up doors to more complex work, to new clients. It can bring a lot of opportunities. So if you don't have the title and you don't want the title, you might look at what are some of the alternative titles you can have, like counsel. What does it look like to be a counsel, a permanent counsel with the firm, counsel track? What does it look like to get off the partnership track? I see some of the big firms in this sort of offering alternative tracks to associates. Hey, you don't have to be on partnership track. You can just be on this, I'm not going to become a partner track, and offering it to associates at a fairly early year of call and making it sound like it's this great thing. And I get really concerned when I see associates taking them up on that in the early years, because it's a track to making less money, but working very hard nonetheless. And I question the value of that track. I really do question the value of that track. And we could get into a great debate about it, but sometimes I feel like it's a way for the firm to benefit from highly skilled labor at a reduced price point and with reduced compensation and benefits. That's kind of where I sometimes feel that those alternative tracks lead. However, if you really know that you don't want to be a partner and you're clear about that because you don't want the administration or the responsibility, then you can look for those places or those firms where you can just become remain an employee and perhaps with a title like counsel.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I think the decision to take on a role that is like that has so many different factors that are being weighed in relation to that decision, factors that are career related and often family related. I've seen a number of young women, but lawyers who are new parents, right? Women and men who've taken on that role in part because the role comes with a cap, right? That there are certain limits on what is expected in terms of hours. And so it's interesting. I think that is, as we see more of those types of roles become available and people in them and see what happens over the long run, we'll see how they play out. And I think it's really for each of us to be looking at it and to think about, right? The concerns that you've raised about it. And also, again, for each of everyone who's making these decisions to make those decisions intentionally based on what is going on in their own lives, their own career objectives, their outside of career objectives. And is that decision going to serve them, right? Is that really what they want?
Absolutely, 100%. At the end of the day, this is it. We want people to do deep thinking and make great decisions for them. And I'm going to say this, there's a lot of talk these days about quiet quitting. Yeah. It's not a term I love. It's the term it's now de rigueur. It's now the way people are calling it. So we'll call it quiet quitting. Fine. Quiet quitting, which is not working a good day, doing your job, taking care of your business, taking care of your clients. At the end of the day, leaving, at a reasonable hour and giving lots of time and attention and priorities to other things in your lives apart from work, right? Quiet quitting. This is not a new concept. It's got a new name and it's being talked about. I've been talking with lawyers. I was thinking about this. I went and did a women lawyers retreat, I think in Saskatchewan many years ago. And the women lawyers who were speaking were talking, all of them, a number of them were talking about how they had carved out, they were partners at firms, how they'd carved out these alternative approaches for themselves, where they worked a reduced number of hours while maintaining their practice so that they could take care of other commitments that were important to them. This was like probably in 2015, 2016, something like that. It's been going on for a long time. And these folks didn't have to take an alternative track or give up leadership in order to have the lives that they wanted to lead and to have. And so I would say that to folks, don't think partnership isn't for you because you don't want to work crazy hours. What I would say to you is find the place where you can be a partner and not work crazy hours. Oftentimes it comes down to, numbers, right? You take reduced comp for reduced hours, right? Based on what's fair, what makes sense. The women who were speaking with me had made that decision. I'm going to work 3 days a week. I'm going to contribute to my firm, and I'm going to take reduced comp because of that. And I'm good with that. So there's many things to consider here, but I would not want someone to think I have to get off of partnership track because it's not going to fit my lifestyle, what I want from my lifestyle. Think again and look and explore whether it's not possible to have the lifestyle you're seeking and be a partner in your firm.
I love that, Allison. That is so powerful. And I love that. I love that. And to the point about quiet quitting, to me, the quiet quitting carries with it this almost, I don't want to say giving up because that's probably too strong, but it's not looking or not being in an environment where there's a pull, right? And maybe I'm being idealistic, but I think in the work that we do professionally, when there is a pull, when you're working towards something, you feel connected to your work and you're enjoying it at a level that is beyond compensation, right? It's something that you attach to. There's so much more fulfillment in that work. And so, I haven't followed the quiet quitting articles. I've seen a lot of them on my LinkedIn feed. I've read a few of them. So I'm not sure I grasp entirely the full concept of quiet quitting, but to my mind, there's a difference between putting boundaries on work that you love and being engaged in that work versus, and being intentional, right? Choosing that this is what I want and I'm going to do it in a limited way versus I hate this thing I'm doing and I'm just going to do the bare minimum until I figure out what I want to do. So I'm not fully up to speed on the current, what exactly is meant by that. But I think I just like to see everybody making a choice, right? And maybe it is that you decide to stay somewhere for a little pocket of time that you know has no future for you. But ideally, you're able to find something that you can attach yourself to that's going to pull you forward, that you're going to be able to connect with and engage with. Because if you can't find that, it's a pretty painful road to be traveling for an indefinite period of time. So
100%.
Yeah.
2 hours of draining, energy sucking is got way more impact than 10 hours of work that's engaging.
Yeah.
So
I think, Sorry,
one of the things that came up at Associate Mentoring Plus in one of the conversations we were having recently was really about identity as a lawyer. And is it possible to really excel as a lawyer if you have other parts of your life that are very important and other identities that draw you, such as parenthood, such as, could be a lot of different things, right? Such as your passion for mountain biking, things that you want to invest your time in. And do you know what the conclusion of all the experts we had was? You're likely going to be a better lawyer if you've got more things in your life than just law.
Fabulous. I believe it. It. I don't think it's the question of, do I have outside interests? I think it's, do I love this? Do I want to be a better lawyer? Have I made that decision to be an excellent lawyer? Because if you've made that decision, I can completely see how the other parts of your world, your life will support you in that versus I don't know if you commit all your time to something, but you're not fully into it, then I don't think it matters, right? How do you excel in that situation? So love it. I love what you're discussing in AMP. So I have one last question for you, Allison. This has been so fun. What do you recommend for lawyers who are thinking about partnership and they don't know who to talk to or where to start? So maybe they do want to have that conversation, but they're not quite ready to do it with somebody at their firm.
In that case, it's probably really great to talk to a coach. I don't like doing that. I don't like selling coaching that way or, promoting coaching that way. And yet there's a reason why we're coaches. We're coaches because we have an obligation of confidentiality to our clients. We know a lot of people. We've coached a lot of people. We have a lot of lawyers. We have that perspective. I know you have that perspective, Paula, as do I. And it's a good starting place to start with a trusted advisor who you can talk to in 100% confidence. So whether that's a coach, whether it's someone at the Lawyer's Assistance Program, a counselor, a family member who has some insight into the legal profession, anyone you can find who you know you can speak to in confidence and who's going to be able to really listen and help you uncover what those next steps forward are going to be.
Absolutely.
That's what's most important.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think I would probably also think of maybe people outside, like, and you talked about this, right? Like somebody outside of your organization, somebody who you can trust. Coaches are great for that because we're trained to ask questions. Really, this is an exercise of the individual answering questions, asking and answering questions for themselves that will help them. And to be able to do that in a safe space and to be able to think out loud, I think one of the big benefits of having a conversation, whether it's with a coach or a mentor or a family member or a counselor, is that when you say the things out loud, when those thoughts go from something that's kind of spinning in your mind to words that are now expressed in the world, there's something so liberating about that. And you're able to see it more objectively. And I think it just helps move that decision-making process forward more quickly. And yeah, I love that. Allison, this has been so great. I'd love for you to share where everybody can find you. So where are you? Where do you hang out in this hybrid world of ours?
So I hang out most actively on LinkedIn. I think you can find me at The Lawyer Coach. I'll make sure
we will put links to all of these things on the website. So yes, absolutely.
The other social is kind of being driven by my LinkedIn posts. Okay. The Slaw is a great place to find me in my monthly column. And really, you can find me at thelawyercoach.com. That's the website. I'm very excited to have welcomed a new coach to thelawyercoach.com, which is Janine Chand, who's working with associates on career and practice management. So there's two of us up there. And yeah, you can learn more about me and what we do at thelawyercoach.com.
So beautiful. Thank you so much, Allison. It's been such a pleasure having you here today. So much appreciate all your wisdom and insights on all things partnership related. And for anyone who has questions about this, I think, feel free. Is that okay if I'm sort of extending this invitation on your behalf? Is that
Yes, we've just scratched the surface on a very deep topic. Yeah. What I want to leave people with is don't discount it too soon. Don't discount it because of what it used to be and what it used to mean. Consider it for the opportunity that it might hold out.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, Allison. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody who has tuned in this week. I know you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have enjoyed having it with Allison. This has been so fun. And thank you again. And for everybody, look forward to reconnecting again next week. Hope you have a wonderful week. And that if this is something that's on your mind, that you've got some new ideas in terms of what to do next. So goodbye, everybody. Thanks again for joining. If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, subscribe and follow the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you haven't already, please leave a rating and review. Your feedback will help me create a podcast that's tailored to your needs and goes straight to the heart of what matters to you. For instructions on how to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com/podcast launch. See you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. If you want more information, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com. See you next week.